One of the most requested things I get asked time and time again to do is a tour of my studio. So today we're going to have a quick look around at some of the gear I've collected over the last 20 odd years. Before we get going, a little background on why my current setup has such a focus on hardware synths and outboard effects. I first used Cubase, which is my DAW of choice, around 25 years ago, and by now, sitting in front of a computer just doesn't hold my attention like it used to, so moving around the room using hardware synths and effects rather than just being sat in one spot for hours on end is really important for my creative process and helps keep things interesting for me. But I will stress the ideas you have are always going to be far more important than the gear you use, whether that's hardware or software. So you absolutely don't need a wall of synths and flashing lights in order to make music. In fact, a lot of my most popular tracks were made completely in the box. But at this stage of my musical journey, I just really appreciate the tactile experience that using outboard synths and effects gives me, and how it holds my attention. Whilst the majority of the gear we're going to have a look at was bought in the last 10 years, there's also a lot of stuff I collected prior to starting the Fella project in 2006. So some of these things are actually approaching 25 years old now, so this collection has definitely been built up over a very long period of time. Anyway, let's get into it and start by looking at the synths to my right, which are on the main 4-tier Jasper stand. Starting at the bottom, we've got a Korg Monopoly, which isn't in the best of shape, but it has so much of that vintage flavour and unpredictability that when it actually works, everything always sounds amazingly organic. I mostly use it in unison mode for fat fuzzy basses, but occasionally I use it in poly mode for some of those Boards of Canada style wobbly VHS moments. Next to it we have the Waldorf XT, which after a Korg MS2000 was one of the first synths I owned. It really excels at textural sounds like pads and effects, as well as bells and more glassy sounds. The modulation options are crazy, so you can get a lot of nice movement and variation in your sounds. Behind that is a Kenton Pro 2000 Mark II, which is used to generate CV and gate for the Monopoly and the SH101 we'll see in a second. Above the Kenton is the Elektron Rhythm. It's an analog drum machine which can also load samples, so you get some really interesting stuff combining both, along with the amazing sequencer that has so much depth that it helps keep things from being too repetitive. Beside this is the Sequential Prophet 6. I really love this synth, and it's one that I've spent a lot of time with and probably bonded with the most. I've used it a lot for fuzzy basses, pads and melody sounds over the years. The Prophet 6 alongside the SH101 were used pretty much exclusively to make my album Illusion of the Tail, and as that's probably my favourite release, this synth will always have a place in my heart. Up next is possibly my favourite synth though, the Roland SH101. This is literally on everything. It's all one big sweet spot, and it's so emotionally evocative that you'd struggle to get a bad sound out of it. It just always sounds beautiful. I spoke about it a lot in the second part of the Embers studio session video, so if you haven't watched that one and want to hear it in action, make sure you check that out. To the right is the Vermona Performer Mark II, which I bought due to the Monopoly being so unreliable. It's a kind of day-to-day replacement if I don't need the same level of vintage weathered sound. It definitely has a different vibe to the other subtractive synths in my setup. The independent filters and envelopes for each oscillator really give it an organic sound with lovely variance between notes. Like the Monopoly, you can cycle through the oscillators in mono mode as well, which leads to some really interesting varied sounds. Above this is the Sequential OB6. I do really like it and have got some awesome sounds out of it, but I haven't bonded with it in quite the same way as I did with the Prophet 6, but maybe I just need a bit more time with it. To the left of the OB6 is the Yamaha DX100. I bought this around 2014 for a side project I still haven't got around to releasing. It's not really used much on Fella stuff, but I think it's on a few tunes from A World Without and the track Secrets from Illusion of the Tail. Clinging to the side of the Jasper stand are a few other synths. At the top is a Cyclone Analogic TT303. I actually have two of these, but one of them isn't working properly at the moment. You can hear them on tracks like Relics, Neon Mount and Edge of Darkness, as well as in a few places on the new album. Below this is the Oberheim Sem Pro. Whilst these reissues don't sound as lush as the originals, they still sound pretty incredible. It's all about the filter with this one, which I actually use a lot to send external audio through as well. It definitely offers some different flavours to the other synths in my setup, and I often use it to layer with other monophonic sounds. Under this is the Elektron Digitone. I really like this, and it's a lot more fun to play with FM on this than on the DX100. I've mainly been using it like a sound module, but at some point I need to get involved with the sequencer like I do with the rhythm, as that's where the magic really happens with the Elektron stuff. On top of the racks below is a Vermona DRM1 Mark II drum synth. I got this sometime around 2002. I use the hi-hats in pretty much everything I've done, and the kicks are really nice too. Using it for all the drum sounds doesn't work very well on fellow tracks, but it's still really cool to slowly adjust things whilst recording to get some nice variation in the sounds you are actually using. It's great for layering, and I love sending the snares through some big delays. At the top of the rack we have a Roland JV1080 which I got in 2019. I was making a lot of 90s drum and bass inspired stuff and just wanted some of that flavour. It also reminds me of the first bit of production kit I ever bought, which was a Yamaha SW1000XG sound card, which I got in 1999. Its built-in sound module had all the standard general MIDI sounds alongside some much better ones. At the time it enabled me to plug into the future of desktop music and sound design. But essentially I was missing the kind of sounds from my early days, and I scratched that itch with the JV1080. Below this is the Oberheim Matrix 1000. I love this. Much like the SH101, it just has a really sad sound to it, so it's great for the more emotional tracks, and it really complements whichever synths you're using alongside it. All of these synths get MIDI from the PC via a Kenton Through 25, and the Prophet 6, OB6, XT and DX send MIDI back to Cubase via a Kenton Merge 5, which is great for recording automation, and also means that I can use the DX or Prophet to play the modules and synths that don't have a keyboard. Now, let's head over to the second Jasper stand. Let's start off with the sequential Prophet 10. This is all over the new album and was probably the catalyst to start writing it. It's an incredible synth which I can see keeping for the rest of my life. There's a slight crossover with the Prophet 6, but I've struggled to get the Prophet 10 to recreate some of my favourite Prophet 6 patches and vice versa, so they both have a place in the studio. This synth is an absolute joy to play and is so nice to program with one of my favourite interfaces of all the synths. I'd say this one has as much soul as the SH101. Whilst it's only been used on the latest album, I can really see this one continuing to be the centrepiece of the studio in terms of synths. Above the Prophet is the Hydra synth by Ashen Sound Machines. This thing is awesome for coming up with crazy sounds, and also does more traditional synthesis incredibly well too. I love how easy it is to use and really enjoy the expressiveness of the polyphonic aftertouch. Whilst this wouldn't be used for everything, it's really good for getting some contrast in textures to what the other machines can do, and I've been using it a lot for pads and other atmospherics. Next to the Hydra synth is a Bastel MIDI looper, which is cool for sketching out ideas. I mainly use it for the ambient streams, as it's a nice way to get some more musical parts going alongside the randomness of the algorithmic sequencer I use for those. Just above this is the Yamaha Rephase CP. Electric piano is all over my music, and traditionally I've used the VST Lounge Lizard by Applied Acoustics. But it's so nice to have something to actually play, and this thing sounds really good. It's actually one of my favourite keyboards in the studio. Next to this is the Korg Wavestate. I did have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this originally, mainly because if I hadn't used it for a few weeks I would totally forget how to do anything and have to dig out the manual. DX100 aside is probably the least intuitive synth of mine to use, but luckily it does sound majestic. They've also recently dropped a software editor for it, which should help simplify things, so I'm looking forward to going a bit deeper with it. Similar to the other setup, all of these synths get MIDI to and from the PC via a Kenton Merge 8 and Kenton Through 12. There are also a few other synths that are scattered around the room, so a quick shout out to the Nordrack 2, JSH drum synth and the Benny Dub DS71, which are all mainly used for effect sounds. So that's the synths taken care of. Let's switch it up and have a look at the guitars now. My main guitar is the PRS Custom 24. It's on everything in my back catalogue. I've had it for over 20 years now. At the time I got it, I worked in a music shop and pulled in some favours to get one at trade price. This would definitely be the first thing I'd grab from the studio in the event of some kind of impending disaster. It's just an incredibly awesome instrument that I genuinely love and would never part with. The newest addition on the guitar front is the Fender Cory Wong Stratocaster. My first guitar was a cheap Strat copy, so it's nice to finally get one again almost 30 years later. I also wanted to get a different flavour of sound to help when layering up multiple guitar parts, and I really like how the single coil pickups sound for more ambient stuff as well, as it really helps it cut through when there's a lot going on. Next up is a PRS SE Custom 24. This was used as a backup guitar for a short-lived band show I did back in 2015. It was actually really useful as the other guitar randomly died in the middle of a couple of shows. It doesn't play as nicely as the main PRS or the new Strat, but I will probably hold on to it in case I do any live shows again so that I can leave the main Custom 24 at home. The Fender Jazzmaster was a slightly impulsive purchase, which I think was a result of how much I always loved the look of them when I was younger. It's got some really lovely tones and provides something a bit different to the other guitars. I'm not sure I'll keep hold of it now I have the Strat, but we'll see. The only bass in the collection is the Fender Jazz Bass, which replaced an old Yamaha that was used on everything up to around 2014 but sadly died. I'd love to get a fretless as well at some point, but this is the bass I use for everything at the moment. In terms of acoustics, first up is a classical guitar made by Carvalho. I learnt classical guitar when I was young, and it's the instrument that really got me into music. I didn't have a classical guitar for nearly a decade after my first one broke, so it was nice to get one again for recordings, and this one features on tracks like Empty Jar and Tantalus. The electroacoustic guitar is a Tanglewood, which I barely use. I bought this around 2005 when I was listening to way too much Ani DiFranco, Khaki King and anything on Candy Rat Records. I'm terrible at playing steel string acoustics, but it's nice to have for layering sometimes and just sampling to make other sounds with. There's also a bonus mandolin and ukulele banjo, which occasionally get used for little incidental notes and noises here and there. For recording the electric guitars and bass, I run them through my Kemper profiling amp, which is mainly using Michael Bricked profiles. I was using the Line 6 Pod 2.0 for many years, which was great at the time, but this is a whole different level. The Kemper goes directly to my sound card for the dry signal, but I also use another output on the Kemper to send it to the mixer so that I can use the effects sends there as well. The mixer I use is a Soundcraft GB8. It obviously allows me to plug in a lot of instruments, but the main reason I use it is because it has 8 effect sends. This is awesome when recording stuff, but also fun when I'm working in Cubase, as I have a dedicated output from the computer going to the mixer so that I can get really hands-on with delays and reverbs. The synths I use frequently go directly into the mixer, and things I don't use quite so often go via a patch bay, where I can switch up what's being used. Normally I have the effects sends coming back on separate channels into the mixer, which not only gives the best sound and control options, but is also very cool for some nice feedback loops, which are great for more ambient stuff. At the moment, I've actually got it set up for my ambient streams, so all of the effects pedals are going to a smaller Mackie 1202 mixer, which then groups the delays and reverbs into 2 stereo pairs, which come back into the Soundcraft. Doing this frees up a lot of channels so that I can have more synths going at the same time and have the 4 guitar loops I'm recording on the looper pedals go into their own channels. In terms of the effects pedals used on the mixer sends, these are all on the shelf above the mixer for easy access. The first 4 sends are delays and the last 4 are reverbs. The first delay is the Strymon Al Capistan. It's really good for more organic tape sounding stuff as it isn't clocked to the tempo of the track. The SH101 loves this pedal. Next we've got the Otto BIM, which is awesome for some of those 80s digital delays. I haven't had this one too long, but I have been absolutely loving it so far. The Strymon Volante is easily the best in terms of getting an authentic tape delay sound. I've been really impressed with this one and I've used it a lot. Like a lot of my pedals, the Strymon Timeline was actually bought for the pedal board I use with my guitar. I actually ended up using it more for Cubase sessions, so it's been on the effects sends for a while now. As I've added the other delays since then, I can see this one going back to being used with the guitar at some point. It does so many things well, but for obvious digital or tape delays, the BIM and the Volante have it well beaten. Luckily, modes like the lo-fi, reverse and filter delays mean this one will be sticking around for some different options. The Specular Tempest by GFI can actually do reverbs and delays, but for the majority of cases I use it for reverbs. It's a great sounding pedal, though I do miss having the same level of control that I get with other pedals up here, as I only really get into tweaking patches when it's connected to the computer, which I rarely do. The Mercury 7 by Meris is incredible. It does the big reverb tail so well and it definitely has a different vibe to the other reverbs here. I really need to check out more of the Meris stuff at some point. The Strymon Big Sky is probably the reason I got back into guitar pedals so much over recent years. I've used it constantly since I bought it. Again, it was originally bought for the live show, but I was getting so annoyed at having to frequently rip it off the pedal board for Cubase sessions, I ended up getting a second one as well. I'd seen people raving about the Otto BAM for years, and since getting one for myself, I can totally understand why. I mainly use it for those 80s Lexicon PCM flavours, and whilst it's not intended to do the same mega reverbs as things like the Big Sky and the Mercury 7, its ambient setting is actually insanely good, so I do use it a lot for that sometimes as well. I think it might actually be my favourite reverb at the moment. I've also got a setup for using inserts on the mixer too, which uses a radial reamp box to help get the line level signal from the mixer to play nicely with guitar pedals. This is connected to the Boardbrain Patchulator 8000, which is a mini 8-channel patch bay, which means I can leave all the pedals patched into this and easily change the order around and try different ways of routing things. Whilst I tend to change which pedals are used as inserts a lot, I typically have the following ones permanently set up. The Strymon was bought for guitars, but sounds equally awesome on synths. I've used it a lot with the SH-101, which loves the chorus, and I seem to use the vibrato a lot with guitars. In terms of pedals which give you that wobbly old VHS sound, I think the Fairfield Circuitry Shallow Water is my favourite. The low pass gate filter is especially cool for dulling down certain sounds and keeping things tasteful. It sounds great with the Yamaha CP. The Chase Bliss Warp Vinyl Hi-Fi Edition also does a similar thing, just with the option of a much higher quality sound if you need it. Whilst I generally prefer to use the shallow water, sometimes this one just does the job perfectly, so it's good to have both options. In terms of getting from the mixer to the PC, the 8 group tracks of the mixer go into the Cranbourne Audio 500 ADAT, which is loaded with 8 of their Camden 500 preamps, which sound incredible. In most instances, I record the dry signal on channels 1 and 2, delays on 3 and 4, and reverbs on 5 and 6, but do switch it up depending on what I'm recording, and often use channels 7 and 8 to send stuff from Cubase to the desk for dubbing things out. Splitting the wet and dry sounds enables me to tweak things a bit more in Cubase and makes it possible to adjust the ambience levels later on in the process or make any other edits and tweaks. I'll often slightly sidechain the delays and reverbs from the dry sounds as well, which helps things fit in the mix a bit easier. The 8 Camden 500 preamps go via ADAT to the RME UFX, which is the main sound card for the setup. I also have an RME UCX connected via ADAT as well to get more ins and outs. I love the Total Mix software as it makes it easy to set up any configuration I could possibly want to use. All the inputs and outputs from the sound cards go via a patch bay along with some of the hardware on the desk. In terms of outboard, at the top we've got the Louder Than Liftoff Silver Bullet, which is a stereo tone amp that sounds glorious. I run everything through this when mixing, and when I remember to, I also track synths through it as well. This is definitely my favourite bit of outboard in my setup. Below it is the API 2500 compressor. I mostly use this for my drum bus, but quite often use it on other things as well. Whilst it's mainly used for a bit of extra punch, it can be quite nice with some subtle settings to just smooth over stems when mixing. The API 5500 EQ was actually the first I got of the 3. It's great for subtly cutting and boosting things, but for more surgical stuff I tend to prefer software EQs. I tend to only use this on stems or groups rather than individual tracks. A typical example of how I might use all the outboard would be sending a stem track of all of my synths to the API EQ before it goes into the Silver Bullet for a little more drive. The Silver Bullet's inserts will be patched to the API compressor to just tame some of the wilder moments and give it a bit of that API flavour, and the finishing touches would be the Pultec inspired EQ on the Silver Bullet. The PC, which is hidden behind me, is made by Inter Audio, and I've had it since 2012 and it's still going strong. It's running Windows 7 and is completely offline, which is probably why it still works. As always, I'm running Cubase as my DAW. I'm still on Cubase 9 as it's the last version that works on Windows 7, and as I've got so many projects I want to finish on this machine first, I won't be upgrading either for a while. Whilst I don't really do any synth parts in the box, I still use Native Instruments Kontakt for all my orchestral libraries and multi-samples. In terms of plugins, I use a lot by FabFilter and DMG. The PC also has a UAD Octo card in it, so I tend to use a lot of their plugins too, but normally more when I'm mixing down rather than when I'm writing. In terms of standalone software, the thing I use the most is iZotope RX. It's crucial for tidying up random noises that can happen with some of the older synths or interference picked up by the guitars. I also use Resonic Pro Player for all of my sample browsing and general music listening. In terms of monitoring, I have 3 sets of active speakers. Starting on the outside are the Event Opals. These ones pack a punch and have a beautifully open top end. They are quite big for my studio space, so most of the time I actually write on the Genelec 8330s. They're the APM models which use the GLM software to auto-calibrate the speakers based on the acoustics of my room. The Event Opals have a similar system, but you have to adjust the EQ manually, and there are only a couple of bands to play with. I seem to use the Genelecs more when writing and the Events more for referencing or for when I just want to really enjoy listening to the music. Next up are the Avantone Mix Cubes. I was originally just using one for checking my mixes in mono and also for the less flattering real-world scenario sound, but I added in another one as I really like working on them. I often catch a lot of potential problems with the mixdown when using these, which I might otherwise miss on the more powerful speakers. All of the monitors are controlled via a Drawmer MC 2.1 monitor controller, which makes it easy to switch between the speakers and various inputs like my main music machine or the PC I use for streaming. The main advantage of monitor controllers is the speed and ease of not only switching speakers and inputs, but for checking things in mono and hearing the stereo difference or side signals if you prefer. This really helps spot problems with a mixdown or things that might cause an issue on a sound system running in mono. When I'm doing my mixdowns, I'll also use a Subpack S2, which not only helps with checking the low end, but by this stage of the process, I'm normally sick to death of the tracks I'm working on, and the Subpack brings back some of the fun and helps me enjoy the music a lot more. I love how it keeps me motivated with tracks, as speakers alone lack the immersive quality you get with these. And for anyone not in a position to blast their studio speakers, or if you only work on headphones, it would definitely be top of my list of recommendations for the studio. Whilst I try to limit how much I work on headphones, when I do, I use the Sennheiser HD650s, and if I'm recording using microphones, I'll normally just use my Sennheiser HD25s, which I normally use for DJ sets. Speaking of microphones, my current favourites are the Octava MK012 match pair. I've got the Omni, Cardioid and Super Cardioid capsules, which all have their uses. These replace the Rode M5s, which I normally used alongside the AKG C414 XLS on guitar. The AKG has been used on some vocal tracks over the years too. The Red 5 Audio RV10 was my first condenser microphone, which I got close to 20 years ago. It doesn't get used too much these days, but you can never have too many microphones. I've also got the Rode NTG5, which I use a lot for live streams and video stuff. I'm actually recording this video using the NTG5 and one of the Octavas, so I'll let you know which one I ended up preferring once I get down to editing the video. I actually ended up using the Octava. The SM57 traditionally hasn't had that much use, but I do use it as a vocal mic on my DJ streams, but prefer the Rode NTG5 for production based ones as I'm normally moving around a bit more. There's also an SM58 which was bought for live shows but isn't used too much in the studio. I do also have the DPA 4060 stereo mic kit, which I solely use for field recordings. These were used a lot for Illusion of the Tail. In terms of dedicated field recorders, I've also built up a small collection over the years. The one I've probably used the most is the Olympus LS12, which is due to it being the smallest and its fast boot up time. It's been all around the world and is all over my albums. My first field recorder was actually the Zoom H4n. I used it a lot in my early tours, especially in Australia and New Zealand. I was always pretty happy with the results, but it took an eternity to boot up, so it wasn't great for capturing things quickly, which is why I replaced it with the Olympus. I also left the batteries in it, which have leaked now, so it's currently caked in battery acid gunk. I also have a couple of dedicated recorders which don't have microphones built in. The main one, and probably my favourite of the bunch, is the Sound Devices 702, which I use with the DPA microphones. I also use it for recording videos like these. I also have a Zoom F6, which I got for recording more complicated streams, so that I don't have to worry about having to hit record on multiple devices. The 32-bit float setup means you can't distort anything, but I'm still getting used to that. I still much prefer seeing the levels on the Sound Devices. I think it sounds the best, but I was pleasantly surprised at the improved sound over the older Zoom H4n. I also recently upgraded my standalone unit to a Sony PCM D100 as I wanted higher quality on the road, and something in between the ultimately portable Olympus and the very impractical for travelling but awesome sounding Sound Devices and DPA microphones combo. As mentioned earlier, a lot of my pedals are moved between the mixer setup and the more traditional pedal board, and like all pedal boards, this one is always evolving with different setups being used. I typically only really use the pedal board for more ambient and drone based guitar stuff, and tend to switch out pedals every time I use it. The first part of the signal path stays pretty consistent between setups and starts off with a TC Electronic Polytune going into an Exotic Effects SP compressor, which helps with levels. This goes into the Plus pedal by Game Changer Audio. It's a sustain pedal with great control over the envelope and sounds really organic. The little pedal next to it allows you to switch the dry sound on or off, which is awesome. I love this and it's always on the pedal board. Next is the Electro Harmonix Super Ego, which does a similar thing as the Plus pedal, which I tend to use most of the time, but I do still love using the glissando on this to play chords and smoothly slide between them. I'm also running the Love Pedal Babyface Tremolo as an insert with it. This then goes into the AMT Little Loudmouth volume pedal, which is great for swells. I actually really like the small footprint of these, and it's so much better than various bigger volume pedals I tried out beforehand. This is the point on the board where I swap out the effects the most, so nothing is here for too long, but next is an Electro Harmonix Nano Pog. This was originally on my bass pedal board from the live show back in 2015. I've been having some fun running sustain parts through these and blending in the octave above and below to thicken the sound. The Generation Loss is a collaboration between Chase Bliss Audio and Cooper Effects. This is yet another lo-fi pedal in my collection and I love the sound of it. Definitely a different flavour to the vinyl hi-fi and shallow water I was talking about earlier. This goes into a Cooper Effects outward pedal, which is cool for weird glitchy and time stretching effects. It then hits the Chase Bliss Audio Tonal Recall delay pedal, which is the red knob version which allows longer delay times. Whilst this doesn't work so well on the mixer with line levels, it does sound incredible on the guitar before hitting the Kemper. As it's an analog delay, it's got a very different vibe to the other delays I use. I've also got a pair of AMT EX50 expression pedals which I use for the Big Sky and the Tonal Recall. In terms of the bass, I will typically either go through the Kemper using some bass profiles or just DI it and use some UAD plugins, but I do often like to run through a compact bass board as well. This starts with the Polytune 2, which goes into the great sounding Keeley Bassist limiting amplifier, which I'm using for compression. It's then into a Tech 21 Bass Boost chorus, which you can hear on tracks like Inception and Everyone. This then goes into the SansAmp Bass Driver DI, which is the programmable version. I have a basic clean tone for most uses, a slightly brighter version for playing high register stuff, and a more driven sound for heavier sounding tracks. There's also a lot of pedals which aren't currently being used on either pedal boards or the mixer. Some are more recent additions and some I've had since school, but they do all get used in some capacity. I also have an RJM GT16 MIDI foot controller that I've used for live shows in the past to control everything from reverbs and delays to Max MSP and Ableton, but these days I mainly use it to control my loopers for live streams where I'm playing the guitar, but I do have pages set up with it for deep access to the Strymon pedals, so I'll often use that on the Big Sky when I'm recording ambient stuff. So that pretty much covers all of the important equipment. There's some DJ stuff and some controllers for live sets kicking around, and a small area I use for video editing and streaming, which maybe we can look at another day, as well as endless amounts of cables. So many cables. Thanks to anyone who's made it this far. I hope it wasn't too nerdy, and if you have any questions or would like to see me go a bit deeper on any of the things I've mentioned, feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed the video and haven't done so already, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, as that would be really appreciated. Anyway, thanks so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you all later.